Hello and welcome to a new episode of Everstage's Go to Master Show, Season 3. We converse with RevOps and GTM leaders from some of the most successful companies today and learn from their unique stories. Joining us today is Amber Rouse, most recently the RevOps Director at Sharecare. Thank you for being here today, Amber. Could you please share a little bit about yourself to our listeners?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So I've been in the sales operations slash revenue operations space for about 10 years. Most recently at health and wellness navigation company, Sharecare. I have a health and wellness background. I worked at WebMD back in the day. Also, most recently at Cardlytics in the SaaS space.
Perfect. We looked at your career path, and it's been quite unique from analytics to revenue operations. What key skills helped you make the transition successfully, and what advice would you give to those looking to pivot into RevOps? There is no school or college for studying RevOps. So, what kind of advice would you give to those looking to pivot into revenue operations?
Sure. So, in terms of my background, like I've always liked math. I've liked crunching numbers. I've kind of been a math geek. Um, a lot of my early career was in the ad serving space, and I was in a role where I wanted to give a shout out to my team. So I had a little bit of downtime, and I proactively started pulling together metrics showing changes over the past year. Like, here's what we have done. Here's how we have moved the needle. Here are some things that we have done, to help move the company forward, and presented it to my manager, just really, again, to, give some kudos to the team. And she presented it to her manager. And I learned later that she was a person who was very good at seeing things in people that might translate well into other positions. She was really good at putting people in the right seat. So she was impressed in the analytical work that I had done and moved me into more of an analytics type role, which over time morphed into sales operations and revenue operations. So I have her to thank for that. I really enjoy the work. It's nice to wear a big, broad hat. It's never the same thing day over day, and for me, it's fun. It's like solving a puzzle.
It's fighting a lot of fire for sure on a daily basis, and you wear a lot of multiple hats as well. And you've led RevOps initiatives at multiple companies, including Carlytics and Sharecare. What's been most impactful RevOps project that you worked on, and what made it successful?
Sure. So at the most recent company that I was at, we had a very long sales cycle. So it would be about a year on average between when sales would, start talking to a prospect and open an opportunity, and when we would win, just based on the product and the buying cycle. So there was a need to understand, before a year had went by, as we were onboarding new salespeople, are they doing the right things to ultimately be successful in the role? Managers wanted to understand it to make sure they had the right people in the right seats. The sales reps that we hired wanted to understand it. They wanted to be successful. They wanted to know that they were doing the right things. So I partnered with the enablement team and sort of took a bottoms up approach, looking at, the sales funnel, right? To win an opportunity, you have to create an opportunity. So you have to be creating pipeline. And to create pipeline, you have to be getting meetings with people, right? Moving up the funnel. And to get meetings with people, you have to be doing outreach. So we developed some KPIs, some metrics to better understand, how many people does need to be outreach to in a given week or a given month. What does the meeting conversion rate need to look like? How many, outreaches on average need to result in a meeting to then see what how many meetings does it take to get an opportunity? What does the win rate look like? How many opportunities on average close? So we were able to really back into metrics and KPIs to give people goals to shoot for. And we turned that into some quarterly metrics and dashboards that we were able to provide to give people readouts around how they were performing against these goals. And using those, it gave them a sense of, are they doing the right things to be successful? And it gave their managers insight into that as well, in case coaching opportunities were needed and could help.
You spoke about partnering with teams at Sharecare. You played a major role in Salesforce adoption, and obviously you could have had a lot of stakeholder management in this as well, managing a lot of stakeholders in doing this. What strategies did you use to drive adoption across teams, and how do you ensure RevOps tech stacks truly support business goals?
Sure. So my first project at the last company that I was at was a kind of big project. We were about to really grow the sales team drastically, and there wasn't sales training in place to teach people around how to use the tech stack, how to use the tools available to them for selling. So it was a big project. I interviewed a lot of people. I understood how they used the tools, the CRM, other tools in the stack, and built out training. Learned best practices, learned what was working, saw some areas for improvement that we, visited over time. That was really helpful for me to be able to meet every new salesperson as they came in, train them on the ways that things should be done and best practices. And really, I'm not a salesperson, but I feel like in every role, you need to be able to sell, right? Like salespeople don't want to be spending their day in a CRM entering data, right? They need to understand what's in it for them. Why is it going to benefit them in the long run to do this thing that they might think is a bit tedious? So, for example, we wanted them to go in and tag competitors, right? If we're engaged in an RFP, who else are we competing against? And that's helpful so that over time we have data to see how we perform against our competitors and which competitors are we winning against? Which competitors are we losing against? So that we can dig in and understand why are we losing against them and what can we do to improve our offerings. Another one is, tagging in Salesforce the main contact that they're working with so that over time we can do things like look at that person's title to understand which personas are most successful for us to sell against the various products. It just really helps us, the intelligence really helps us grow the business. So anytime we would roll out something new and train on it, you really had to include the what's in it for you piece to drive the adoption and be a little bit salesy. I'm also a proponent of making myself available. So as you train people, right? Like when you're new, a lot of things are being thrown at you. You're not going to remember everything when the time comes, perhaps 3 months later to create your first opportunity. Maybe you'll remember that you learned something about it, but you don't remember the specifics. So I always like to make myself available for questions. Oftentimes I feel like this is taking me a long time and there's got to be a better way. And oftentimes there is. And I want to make things easy for people. And if there's not a better way, it's helpful for me to know, what the challenge is so that I can think about and perhaps investigate and develop a better way to do things. It's all about, ease of operations for me.
It sounds like change management is all about educating what's in it for you or selling what's in it for you in general. Solid thought. And you worked closely with sales and RevOps teams to improve efficiency and performance. What are some important metrics that leaders should focus on to drive sustainable revenue growth?
So for RevOps leaders, it's really like looking at what you can do to move the needle. It's not going to be, there's not going to be one or two things that are going to be a catch-all that are going to, drastically increase win rates and change the business. It's going to be lots of little things that add up to big change. So a couple of topics are tied to increasing the win rate, decreasing the cycle time, and decreasing churn. So, kind of digging into those, the win rate. So, first, like make sure it's being used properly, right? Like, you might dig in and find a salesperson that has an amazing win rate, higher than other salespeople. And when you dig in, it can be a little bit questionable, right? Like they're not doing better at hitting their goal than other people. So what's happening? And some people don't like to close out opportunities as lost. They don't necessarily want to have a they feel like losing an opportunity is a failure. So I've found that developing criteria not only around when to open opportunities, but also when to close them and communicating that out is valuable. Like everything should move in and out of the funnel. Everything should either be closed won or closed lost at some point in time. And so, you don't want people to kind of hide behind opportunities that aren't really going to happen. So, other things you can do tied to win rate are digging in to understand things like win rate by persona and industry. Where is this highest and how can it be dialed up? Where is it low and how can it be optimized? Or are you spending time outreaching to the wrong companies or the wrong people? You can look at conversion rates within your lead process. There's always, I feel like, changes that can be made to the lead flow. Is marketing sending leads to sales that are qualified? If not, couldn't there be a conversation with marketing around what a qualified lead looks like? Is sales then doing their part and are they calling on them quickly? If not, like, does it make sense for them to have SLAs? Really, a lot of things can be optimized there. Other things to impact win rates are looking at conversion rates between stages. So, what is the conversion rate moving from a stage 0 to a stage 2 or a stage 2 to a stage 4 and seeing where are the conversion rates slowing down and is there anything that can be done to improve there? Another thing that I've seen that's really successful is asking sales when they're getting stuck and offering help. A lot of people don't like to ask for help, but you never know if your colleagues or your managers know a contact that they can outreach to that can help move the needle, or do they know someone at a competitor who can share some intelligence that can help go a long way. Other things are looking at cycle time. Look at the length of time an opportunity sits in each stage. And is there anything that seems longer than you'd expect or than you'd like? For example, is contracting a lengthier process than would be ideal? See, you can see what could be done there to expedite. We've used the MEDIC framework to really ensure that the right questions are being asked by sales to the prospect to better define their viability as a potential customer. really making sure that upfront you're engaging. For example, one of the fields in Medic is who's the decision maker. So understanding that and making sure that you're engaging that person early on in the sales funnel can help speed up the overall process. And then the last piece of that is customer churn. So are you surveying your clients? What do you do if their NPS score is below average? There should be a plan in place and standard protocol to quickly address to get in front of any potential problems. Are you conducting exit interviews when clients churn? Are you finding out why? And what are you doing with that data? Ideally, it should be stored somewhere where it can be reported on in an aggregated way and trends can be seen. And automation of upcoming renewal reminders for internal purposes are really helpful so that people can start working way ahead of time to plant the seed around potential upsells with their clients so that when it's time for that renewal, perhaps you can add some other products that are relevant to them to that.
Awesome. I'm sure some of these parts, there is an influence on AI in the recent times as well. AI is kind of revolutionizing sales and revenue operations from predictive forecasting to automated decision making. What excites you the most about AI's role in revenue operations currently?
So I am my eyes are newly wide open to all things AI. I feel like everybody's probably seen some cool things around AI, like bots joining meetings and transcribing notes and, you know, building out a follow-up email template for you to send to clients to capture next steps and things like that. That's amazing, right? And that's a big time saver. It saves time on some of the monotonous work and really allows you to spend more time focusing on the strategy and the tactical implementation. I've spent time over the past several months taking some free online classes, really eye-opening things to learn more about AI. And there are some amazing things that I can do to help save time. Like one example from my recent past is I was working on a project where I wanted to take this list of people that we were outreaching to and their job titles and group those into families. So if somebody has CEO in their job title, they would roll up to this family of executive leadership. And if somebody had CMO in their title, they would roll up to marketing, doing that with this list of hundreds of job titles. And I built out what I thought made sense, but then I thought, you know what, let me run this through AI and see what AI thinks. And it created some job families and some roll-ups that I actually liked more than what I had built out. So I went with that. And then the next step for me was to take that and build that out into a Salesforce formula so that I created a new field in Salesforce to tell me based on somebody's job title, what family did they roll up to? And I built out this formula and I was getting an error in it. And so I asked AI, like, why am I getting this error? And it told me, and I said, well, can you rewrite this for me to solve this error? And it did. And it was amazing. And that just opened my eyes to another way that it can really be time saving and help drive. It saves time so that you can spend your time doing things that are perhaps less tedious and more meaningful. Some things that I think could be coming down the way with AI that are really exciting are AI-powered deal risk detection. So instead of just looking at something like an engagement score, AI could analyze subtle buyer behaviors and look at tones in email, look at call sentiments, look at activity gaps in the CRM and do things like that to predict deal risk before it escalates. I feel like the possibilities and what we're going to continue seeing with AI are just endless. There's just endless potential.
Yeah, we're still seeing the tip of the iceberg. Exciting times. Are there any specific resources, books, or podcasts, more like your go-to that you'd recommend for someone looking to scale their career in RevOps?
Absolutely. So I have a lot of experience with Salesforce, but I don't have experience specifically in HubSpot. And I looked into some HubSpot training because I really wanted to see and learn about the interface. But I took a revenue operations class, a free class from HubSpot, and it was mind blowing. It was like a master's level course in all things revenue operations. I really learned through that class the concepts, some of the concepts that expanded my knowledge of revenue operations. It was largely video focused. They spoke to several people in the industry about their experiences and finished with a certification exam, which I was proud to say that I passed and displayed it on my LinkedIn profile.
Congrats on that. Three key pieces of advice you'd like to share with the listeners who aspire to excel in the field of revenue operations.
Absolutely. So, revenue operations is all about being data driven. So, you need to be data driven and you need to vocalize it and speak to it often. You want to work for a company that's data driven and you can help drive the change. So, when you're suggesting a change to a process, show data to back up why it's the right decision. And if you're in meetings and people are wanting to make changes based on hunches or intuitions, and it doesn't necessarily feel right, ask them for data to back it up, offer to help pull it if it's something that you can do. Just make sure that the decisions that are being made are the right ones that make sense. Another one is really mastering the art of cross-functional influence. So RevOps really sits at the intersection of what's potentially a lot of operations roles. So it's sales operations, it's working with marketing operations, finance, sometimes customer service teams have operations. It's learning to speak their language and really align teams around shared revenue goals, not just department KPIs. It's about looking at the customer journey as, for example, as a lead moves from, you know, marketing to perhaps, being called on by sales if things go well, to becoming a customer and moving over to the customer success and finance. And it's I feel like a lot of groups have it nailed down, like what happens within their funnel, but what happens as somebody is moving from one funnel to the next, and is it smooth for the customer, and does it make the most sense, or is there anything that can be tweaked or adjusted to make it even better? And the third one is just staying agile and embracing AI and embracing automation. The landscape is currently evolving. You need to be open to AI. You need to be embracing things like AI-driven forecasting and automation and process optimization.
Well, that brings us to the end of this insightful episode of Go to Masters. Big thanks to Amber for sharing her experiences and valuable insights. Remember, you can tune in every week to learn more from game changers driving hypergrowth companies across the globe. Go to Masters is brought to you by Everstage, your trusted partner for transforming the way businesses handle sales commissions. I'm your host, signing off.